You said you got it, Pavitra? Yeah. All right. Well, I will start to share my screen. Well, welcome everyone to today's meeting. Let's Dish Food, Beverage, and Restaurant PR. We are so happy to see all of your faces on Zoom, but in Zoom and most likely in Chicago, closer. We're so happy to start off this year. So we're going to start off with executive board introductions for our 2021-2022 executive board. My name is Taylor Williams. I am the president of DePaul PRSSA.
I'm Juliet Stantz, the faculty advisor of this wonderful group.
I'm Sabrina Fitch-Minton, VP of DE&I.
I'm Veronica. I'm the VP of Digital.
I'm Melania Tuchko, and I'm the VP of Professional Development.
I'm Holly Genvy, and I'm the VP of Events.
Hi, I'm Christina Milich. I'm the VP of Membership.
Hi, I'm Pavitra Reddy. I'm the VP of Social.
Hi, everyone. I'm Giselle, and I'm the VP of Communication.
All right.
So the first thing we want to talk about with you guys is becoming a dues paying member. That has officially opened up for everybody to join if you're interested in joining. There's all kinds of awesome perks like webinars and events. I know I went to a webinar last year on mentorship that just like absolutely changed my perspective on it. There's also access to a lot of different scholarship opportunities that not as many people apply for because you have to be a dues paying member. So you've got a really good chance of getting some awesome scholarships. We would also like to note we never want money to be a factor, like prohibiting anybody from really being as involved as they want to be. So we have dueserships or scholarships for dues available. For anyone who is interested, and you can message Juliet for more information. And dues are $60 annually.
You want to take this, Christina, or did you want me to do it?
Yeah, sure. The other thing that we have is our Slack channel. This is the easiest way to stay involved, get involved and stay involved. We put all announcements, everything we're going to be doing. We put awesome opportunities and all kinds of stuff all in the Slack. We also are starting to use our Slack in a more social way as well. So if you are new to campus, if you're a sophomore or a freshman and have never been on campus before, we have lots of people who have been on campus and would love to get together and walk around with you or catch lunch or whatever else. So yeah, this is the QR code for our Slack, and I will get the link to send in the chat here shortly.
Thanks, Christina. So for our upcoming events, of course, we have tonight's meeting, and then in a couple of weeks, we'll have our meeting on PR in the healthcare industry. And then afterwards, we'll have traveling with PR, next destination, the Windy City, so all about the travel industry. And then we'll close out the quarter with a meeting about event planning and PR. And these will all take place on Zoom this quarter and at 6 p.m. on Mondays. And then coming up this week, we have our chapter development session. So this is something with PRSSA National, which is what we pay our dues through and where you get all those benefits Christina just talked about. And we'll be presenting a chapter development session to help learn about how to have a good PRSSA chapter, and some other schools are presenting as well on this Wednesday, and it's free to join, so you can scan the code to register, and it'll be a cool little family feud theme as well, so feel free to join us.
I'm going to talk really quickly about an event we have going on later in the week. We were wanted to do something social, kind of everyone's back on campus, and so we're doing a little like meet and greet, an info session if you want to hear more about PRSSA, or just if you've been a member for the past year and haven't met a lot of us yet. This is your time, and so we're going to be getting donuts for everyone. coffee, lots of caffeine will be there. And it's this Friday. We're gonna meet in Levon 301 on the Lincoln Park campus. And it'll start at 11, but we'll be there until 1. So feel free to stop by, bring your Pride friends, all of the things. And if you have any questions, reach out to one of us and we can answer them.
All right, real quick, we have a job opportunity that somebody from the College of Communication alerted us about. So Golan is looking for somebody to dedicate 2 to 3 afternoons or evenings a week for 2 to 4 hours to managing the comment section on Walmart's TikToks, YouTube comments, Facebook, Instagram, all of that kind of stuff on behalf of Golan, which is a pretty large public relations agency if you're new to this stuff. Our immediate past president, Natalie Roman, works for them, and they are very close with DePaul. They offer graduate internships as well. So it's a great way to get your foot in the door. All they expect of somebody to apply to this role is 1 to 2 years of social media management experience. Clubs and extracurriculars can be included in that. Knowledge of social media trends and memes, just so you can relate to people and respond in a nice, humorous manner. And experience using Sprinkler, Sprout, or Hootsuite is a plus. So if you'd like to apply to that, I am sending the link in the chat for the Zoom as here, and then I am also sending it to the Slack channel. So yeah.
Could I add something there? They really like to hire our students, so don't be discouraged if maybe you don't feel you have that much official experience yet. I would still recommend you put your best foot forward and apply. They envision this role as something that's perfect for a student.
So we are talking about food, beverage, and restaurant PR this evening. We have 3 great guest speakers. They are Jose Juarez, the brand manager and global creative excellence at the Kraft Heinz company. Annalise Pieper, I hope I pronounced that correctly, I apologize, who is the director of social media at Heron Agency, and Jeremy Danner, who is the Kansas City on-premise specialist and brand ambassador for Four Hands Brewing Company. So we are going to have each one of our speakers just introduce themselves briefly, talk a little bit about what they do. Then we're going to move into some Q&A with the e-board. We have some prepared questions. And then towards the end, we're going to open it up for a Q&A from the audience. So if you have any questions, you can either hold on to them for the end of the meeting, or you can put them in the chat and we will ask them during the board section. All right, with that said, we will start off with Jose.
Hi everyone, really nice to be here. And it's great to be able to talk back with where I came from DePaul. My background originally actually started off in working restaurants. So in college, I worked at a couple of restaurants in Chicago, bopping around, and I ended up doing it for about 7 or 8 years till 2020, which is actually really funny. But from there, that was kind of like my side gig. I started off working in agencies. So I worked at FCB and at DDB, working on big brands for Michelob Ultra, Stella Artois, Bud Light, and Goose Island. Really fun time, really understanding the consumer from a beer perspective. And it was really nice to work on some big scale campaigns from Super Bowls all the way down to minor activations from a social and influencer standpoint. From there, went to work at DDB, worked on the rebrand for State Farm. And then after that, I got to work as a brand manager for Molson Coors, managing Blue Moon. So helping redefine what it means to drink craft beer in America, one of the oldest craft beers in the US. And so I helped redefine who they look like visually from a packaging standpoint, but also how we communicate and extend our campaigns through PR, through social influencers, and through social. From there, most recently, I started working at Heinz, working as a global brand manager across all of the portfolio of their brands, from mac and cheese to Grey Poupon, Heinz ketchup, Ore-Ida French fries. And what we're really trying to do from a unified vision is help change the culture of creativity for the entire company. This hits various touch points from packaging design, PR, influencers, social, and how we come to in visual campaigns, both from a TV standpoint, but also from new emerging trends like TikTok and social media. I've had a great time really diving into food, and now I'm really excited to jump into consumer packaged goods with brands that we all know very, very well. I think one of the questions we asked was like a fun campaign that we got to work on. And that would take me back to Michelob Ultra back when I was working at FCB. We were bringing to life America's first nationally distributed organic beer. This is very different. And the best way we brought it to life was via a Super Bowl campaign that was like really huge, really big. What was so awesome, I think, and this is where the PR lens kind of comes in, is when we're planning for these big events and big moments in culture, we really have to identify what's going to be on trend and emerging, upcoming. And that helps define how we create a campaign. So we're looking at everything. So what was big and popular coming out from a TV standpoint? So one of the things that we thought about was like Big Little Lies was huge. We also knew that there was this weird trend on YouTube and on Instagram around ASMR, this idea of like hearing sound in a very unique way. So we thought all together, what better way to invite consumers to drink America's, first nationally distributed organic beer by having Zoe Kravitz voice tone in this beautiful, serene backdrop, and just talking about the beer. It was very unique. It was very interesting because typically most Super Bowl commercials are like high quality production, crazy visual effects, all of these different things. And this was a simple shot kind of zooming in on her. It got a lot of headlines, and I think a lot of that was driven because of what was going on in culture. A lot of people saw Big Little Lies, saw Zoe Kravitz. They understood what was going on from like a very unique trend on Instagram and YouTube around ASMR, and it really got people to like turn their heads. So that's a little bit about me, and that was that little story. I'll pass it on to the next person.
Great, thank you so much. And then we'll have Annalise.
Hi, I'm Annalise Pepper. I am the Director of Social Media at Heron Agency. I've been there for about on my 4th year now. My background is public relations. I started working at a social media agency. I kind of just fell into it, ended up working with a lot of CPG brands, was doing that for about 2 years. And then I went to hospitality, worked in the corporate office at Portfolio Hotels and Resorts, where I oversaw 19 properties across the nation, managing their social media accounts and working in the corporate office. And then from there, I went to Heron Agency, where we are a lifestyle communications agency, where we were named as Forbes magazine's top 200 PR firms for 2021, which we're really excited about. We work on many brands, on many industries, but mainly food, restaurant, hospitality, lifestyle. Something fun or an awesome campaign that we worked on was opening offshore Chicago. It is the Guinness Book of World Records largest rooftop deck. That was a fun one because we were part of something pretty incredible and pretty amazing. It was fun executing, getting politicians there, celebrities, influencers, live tweeting, the whole thing, Instagramming, etc. So that's a little bit about me.
Great. And then finally we have Jeremy.
So I'm Jeremy Danner. I work for Heinz Brewing Company. I've been with them a little over 2 years now. Before that, I worked with Boulevard Brewing Company for almost 12 years. And then before that, I got into beer as a server at a brew pub in November of 2005. By June of 2006, I'd worked my way into the brew house. In 2007, I made the mistake of becoming a manager because I wanted to learn how to run a brew pub someday. And I realized that I am a worker bee, not a manager. So in 2008, I got a part-time job at Boulevard in production. At the beginning of 2013, I crossed over to the marketing team after becoming sort of the go-to guy that would go to events, beer schools, beer dinners. I did a lot of interviews, new market launches. So beginning of 2013, I was given the chance to sort of create my own position within the company. So I started writing blogs about new beers and translating the world of marketing to brewers and the world of brewing to marketers, as they're very different worlds, as you guys can probably attest to. In 2014, I started doing social media for the brewery and became more involved in PR and media relations and crisis management. Never really anything too dramatic. We did sell the brewery at the beginning of 2014. We did a major rebrand following that. Then we had a couple small voluntary recalls or withdrawals of beer from the market due to quality standards. I got fired from Boulevard in 2019 and was fortunate that the Four Hands picked me up immediately as an on-premise sales manager and a brand ambassador. And then I've known them for quite some time. So I started doing some marketing, some Twitter and other social in January and writing copy. And it's been fun for me learning how a smaller brewery runs after working in a very large brewery, 225 employees, and now work for a spot that has 45 employees. So it's interesting to see sort of the impacts that can be made and how nimble you can be in working in a smaller company. And probably my favorite thing that I get to do now, apart from helping Four Hands navigate any crises we have, is introducing people to a smaller brewery, because I have 3 minutes with someone to completely inform their entire worldview of who Four Hands is and what we do. So I think some people in my role might be offended or bummed out when someone tells you they've never heard of the brewery, but I view that as an incredible gift, that I get to completely inform everything you're about to know about the brewery. And I drink beer for money too. That's something else I do.
Great. We are going to move into our eBoard Q&A session. So on these questions, if anyone has an answer, you are welcome to you're welcome to come in with an answer. Any of the three panel members. I'll ask the first one, and then all the other members of the eBoard are welcome to chime in if anything comes up for them. So I'm curious, what does an average workday look like for you, if there is an average workday for you?
I'll go first. So working in social media, there's not an average workday. And to that point, social media is 24/7, it's always going. So the average workday is a 9 to 5. It's working some weekends, it's working at night, especially, with things going on with restaurants, people are tweeting and whatnot at night. But the average workday is, content planning. I do a lot of content planning for restaurants. In addition to that, influencer relations, coordinating partnerships, collaborations with influencers, and not just coordinating, but negotiating on behalf of our client, making sure our client's getting the best bang for their buck in the collaboration. In addition to that, doing paid advertising every single day. We're very data driven. So we want to show our clients an ROI, because if they make money, we make money, and we treat their money like our money. So a lot of content planning, photography, and especially working in social media, a manager or director wears a lot of hats. So there isn't just one average day, which is kind of what I love about social media, is that it's never boring and you're always doing something different.
I can jump in that as well. Just thinking about, like, from a PR standpoint, we do two different styles of planning. There's a planning that's kind of going around like fixed moments. So things we can plan for, whether it's the Super Bowl or like last weekend was the Emmys. Those are the moments that we're kind of planning for from a long-term perspective. And then that's like our always on. And then we have these moments that are more like reactive. So if something's happening that's interesting in culture, we'll get a bunch of people together, or agencies will come to us with ideas of how can we interact and like completely interact with this consumer who's paying attention. So the way I like to think about it is, it's not about like the event itself. So if it is the Emmys, it's like what happened at the Emmys. If someone wore something really interesting, or if someone said something very different that got people listening, it's about jumping into that conversation to help further either insert yourself, the brand, into that moment, or connect the dots back to yourself. So those are some of the two things when I'm thinking about just a planning standpoint.
I would say that my day is very similar in that there's no typical day. Since I'm a on-premise sales rep, in addition to the PR and social duties I have, people that run bars don't want to see me before noon, and then they usually don't want to see me between noon and 2 because that's their lunch rush. So I spend the first part of my day, focusing on my marketing duties, checking in with our marketing manager to see what planned post she has coming up. One of the things that I do is I add, given my production experience on both brewing and packaging side, is I'm able to add a lot of technical details to beer announcements or posts that we have about beer to kind of add more substance to those, versus like, here's a cool picture of a bottle. That's great. But to add technical details, how the beer is made, or if there's a special ingredient that was used. And then the second half of my day is I'm out in the market, meeting with buyers, working alongside distributors, and then sort of waiting for something to happen, and oftentimes hoping nothing happens from a PR response side of things. No news is good news most times, but if we have the opportunity to really share something positive that comes about, we've won an award or we've gotten a cool write-up, I'm always on the lookout for those things.
Great. Sort of along those same lines. What are some unique challenges to working in public relations in your specific industry? Do you think it might not be shared by other industries?
I was gonna say, trends happen all the time. Things are always evolving when it comes to food, beverage, and like all of that. Like, I think about from a beer standpoint, working at Molson Coors, we saw the past 2 summers the rise of seltzers, right? So like this is huge. Like we're seeing everything from White Claws to Trulies, and a lot of brands, especially big brands, were jumping in the race to to get there because they weren't there already. So we had launched we launched Vizzy and then Topo Chico hard seltzer. But then when we think about what the payoff is or what the trade-off is around beer sales, right? We're seeing this a little bit from Molson's standpoint, like a decline in beer sales. So it's always saying like that there is something that is always going to change and evolve within the industry. If it's not seltzers, I think before this it was rosé, like a lot of like sparkling rosé and like those types of things were happening. So it just, what are those main drivers and drags to business? And I think it's jumping in on those trends, and it's never being able to predict it far enough in advance to jump ahead. So, or it's either creating the trend yourself.
And to that point, just to mention on the social media PR side is a lot of clients are asking, what's the next Instagrammable thing? Like, what's the next cool thing that are going to bring people into our restaurant? And, everyone's done the little tequila, the tequila trees that just happened. There's so many different things that are on Instagram. So it's just kind of seeing like what's working in other places that it's not Chicago, and then bringing that to Chicago before everyone else does it.
I'm sure Jose would agree that one of the challenges that we face is a lot of the times the people that we're dealing with have been drinking, especially late in the evening if they're having a moment they're sharing in a bar. So it's always interesting to see the types and formatting and the content of the messages that you get on social media. Sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night I'm awake because that's what I do, and I'll scroll through our Twitter messages or scroll through what we've got on Facebook, and I'm like, oh man, this guy has definitely been drinking. So I'll wait till the morning to respond or see what they have to say after that. But for me, the interesting thing about beverage social media, especially alcoholic beverage social media, is it sort of is a bar that never closes, but probably should at some time.
Great. Are there any other e-board members who have a question for the panel?
I talk. Okay, sorry. Anyway, I had a follow-up question for that. Like, so how do you monitor to stay on top of things? Like there's so much going on, always the next trend, seeing what's in the future. I see that in two ways too. You have monitoring the everyday social media flow, and then you also have monitoring the big picture of what the trends are. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So from our perspective, honestly, being on social media 24/7, literally, and it's not even that, it's asking other people, like I'm 29, but seeing what Gen Z's doing, like I'll ask my little cousins, what's cool now? What are the trends? So I can, kind of get an idea of what the next purchase buyers or the next buyer persona is interested in, what they're looking in. And I ask, what are they watching? What's cool? What's not cool? So getting actual feedback from, people in that demographic and seeing and being on social media 24/7, especially TikTok, there's always the next thing on there.
I think with some of where we get most of like our emerging trends is coming directly from our agency partners. So we like to keep a pulse on culture in general. I think just being able to jump into any form that any channel that we're putting out on, so TikTok, Instagram, etc. But usually our agencies will come to us with a, hey, we have this, we saw this on here, here's an opportunity. Usually it's an urgent email or something that just alerts us saying, hey, we have like 3 days to really jump in and capitalize on this before it goes out of trend, or if it like leaves like people's interest. So it's usually trusting the agency and jumping in when, kind of when they say to go.
We look at a lot of data-driven stuff as well, IRI and Nielsen data showing trends, especially, with our sales and what we're seeing in the state of Missouri. We're fortunate that we're only in a few states and primarily sell most of our beer and seltzer and cocktails in Missouri. So we monitor that closely. But then anecdotally, I think it's really important to listen to the people that we get to interact with at festivals and events. Um, people are in the industry. Oftentimes, if they don't like a beer, they won't tell you. They'll just walk away. But regular people will tell you, "I hate this, and here's why." And some people might get offended by that, but I think that's another great opportunity to have someone really tell me what you hate about this beer that I just poured for you, because I think it's neat that I get that opportunity to take that feedback and hopefully shape it into something that's meaningful for our R&D team as they look at what we're going to try to make over the next 2 years.
Great. Are there any like skills, maybe some like internships or classes that you would recommend for a student who's interested in getting involved in PR, or even just in the food and beverage industry in general?
From the PR standpoint, I'm definitely taking writing classes, which of course, writing classes, it's inevitable. And one that was a big one for me, at least, was speech class and talking in front of people. When I first got into the industry, I was very shy. I didn't like doing networking events. I didn't know, I was kind of awkward talking like a girl out of college, being able to talk to people, but that's just a huge thing. Being able to conversate and make conversation, having your elevator pitch ready. So I would say definitely writing skills and being able to talk to anyone about anything.
Ditto on the writing. I think that's going to be such a valuable skill. I also think, to your point about like public speaking, if there's anything around like creative storytelling, I think those types of classes usually help identify, how are we going to convince someone to jump in on what we're trying to sell them. So we have to be influential. You have to be trusted, right? So it's all. I think there's a marriage of both storytelling, speech writing, and just really having all the data to support all of that.
I think if you're going to do marketing or PR for a product or a brand, it's important to be aware of what your competitors are doing as well. It's funny when I'll order somebody else's beer at a bar, the bartender, the manager, are you allowed to drink this person's beer? And that's so absurd to me. That would be like if you were a painter and you only looked at your own art for inspiration and to kind of inform your worldview of what's happening. So I think being aware of what the other people in your sector are doing is very important.
I have a question. This is kind of specifically for Annalise, but for anybody who feels like they've got an idea about this, how would you say running PR for a restaurant it differs and running PR and social media for a restaurant differs from running for something like a hotel or I don't know, other companies that you may have to run social media for?
Yeah, absolutely. So for hotels, so for food, obviously it's driving traffic to the restaurant. So it's highlighting the food. It's, telling the story of the food and, telling the story of the chef and kind of getting all of that background. It's more than just posting a visual picture and hoping it's pretty and people will like it. It's actually weaving a story, through an Instagram feed and strategically placing everything next to certain posts and of that sort. But then doing a hotel, then at the end of the day, the goal is heads and beds. So getting people to the hotel, getting, featuring the restaurant, but highlighting all the amenities, and then not only the amenities, but highlighting what to do around the area attractions. And the target market is much different. So for a restaurant, you're most likely going to be getting locals and trying to create campaigns to drive that local traffic. While hotels, you're looking at feeder markets, which are the markets that, like Chicago's feeder markets would be St. Louis, Ohio, Cincinnati, Minneapolis. So it's definitely different targeting for a restaurant and a hotel.
Thank you.
I would also ask, what do you all think is the best way to get into your field if you don't have that much experience?
I'll take that one.
This is a great.
You
go. So I think what really shines through is just passion, right? So passion around the subject or topic that you're joining. So if it is around food, beverage, hospitality, etc. I think there is a nice through line that, you know, you can at least learn from experience, talk about like how much you like these things. For me specifically, working in restaurants really helped me, but what actually got me further through that was being able to transfer a lot of the skills that I learned there over into my first internship, my first job. So we talk about like if I was working in a restaurant and there were client services, right? So there's a great way to transfer all those skills, that being able to work well under pressure, organize, keep everything going, keep people happy in so many ways, that all transferred over pretty well from my first account management job in advertising. Having connections and work is so vital and important. I think being able to relate to others, but also find ways, if you have a friend that's, you know, works at an agency that you want to work at, or if you know someone who works there, asking them out for coffee and just simply talking to them and getting to know more about what's happening. When it comes to the interview, you know, time or your application, being able to speak to that you met with several people at that agency prior to working there, and that solidified your, you know, excitement to work here, or those types of things. So flexing the network is like super important and vital.
Yep, to add to that, definitely networking is huge. And the second thing is, I would say is, you know, learn from wherever you can, essentially. Like Google, you know, Google AdWords does free certifications, trying to see what skills can teach yourself, skills that you can bring to another agency or company that makes you invaluable. Because the more skills you have for yourself, the more valuable you'll be for a company. So just teaching yourself as much as you can and being a sponge in the industry.
I have a question. Unless Jeremy, you wanted to speak on that last question. Okay, my question is there a campaign, event, or communications problem that you've ever worked on that stands out to you, that, you know, would be kind of like a lesson, something that you might want to share about with us students, that maybe, you know, something that really stands out to you, that would be like a cautionary tale, or something that you really learned a lesson from, powerful moment?
I'll start. I can't go into too many specifics just because lawyers and whatnot, but we had an incident at a brewery that I worked at where a gentleman was credibly accused of some pretty nefarious things in the community. And when these things happen, it's devastating to find out, you know, someone that you work with has been involved in, you know, these allegations. But the thing that you have to remember is what's done is done at that point. And the way you're going to be judged publicly is how you handle it moving forward. And it was really tough to talk with, you know, the owner of the brewery and deal with this, because we're all super passionate, take everything that we do very personally, but you have to really think about, you know, the first thing we say matters the most, maybe. And then after that, then, you know, every next thing you say matters the most, because it you know, becomes more of the conversation, more of the story. But I think anytime, you know, I've been involved with crisis management, with in this instance, or in the instance of a product recall, it really is about very carefully considering that first thing you're going to say. And some people would say they don't want to say something until the consumer has said something, but I think it's very important to begin and shape the conversation in the way that you'd like to, and get out there with it first. And then whenever, you know, in any comebacks to that, you could say, we wanted to talk about this. We felt it was important to talk about this in this way. And that's why we began this conversation this way. So just very carefully consider any first steps you have in dealing with crisis management. I think it's super important.
Thank you. Yeah, I would see, especially around food and beverage. Absolutely.
Also, what newsletters do you all recommend subscribing to? Do you all like read any daily to get your trends and news from?
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
You're good. Go ahead.
I was just about to say, just being on social media 24/7, of course, being on meme accounts, pop culture, trending, stuff like that. But I also, social media today, Ad Week, and Ad Age are like my top three things that I check, especially social media today, because that platform or all the platforms are always changing. There's a new feature, a new algorithm. So staying on top of that is super crucial in, the digital space right now, and PR.
Yeah, I was gonna say Ad Age, Ad Week for sure. And then I like to go on the cultural side and go to IndieWire. That's like one of my favorite places. Understand what's going on from a movie standpoint, cinema, plays, music, etc. Just to kind of get something a little out of the norm from there.
Given that my focus is so specific on beer, I really follow a lot of the main magazines write about beer. There's some industry folks who write about beer from different perspectives. There's one called Beer Business Daily, and it's more aimed at large wholesalers. And I disagree with him a lot, but I think it's important to know who these people are finding influential in the industry, whether or not you agree with them. And like she said, being on social all the time and reading everything that's said about your beer and the business is important.
Is there an event or a campaign that you had a really good time with, or that stands out to you as a really positive memory, or just something that really was just like a standout PR moment for you?
I would just, that Jose was gonna go. I would just say, I don't have a specific one that stands out, but I would say any of our restaurant openings is a really exciting time, only because, working with the owners and seeing the joy of media coming, seeing how excited they get about their press placement, seeing them get excited about influencers posting a picture of their food, just seeing the joy and knowing as a PR professional, we're rainmakers, we're, driving the economy, we're driving, we're telling people to come to this restaurant. So I think just any restaurant opening in general is just an exciting moment for me.
I was going to jump in and talk about just a little bit of last year. So last year, the pandemic happened and it kind of it changed everyone's plans, I guess is the best way to put it. So we planned and set out in the year to have these massive campaigns that were going to intersect different moments in culture. But a lot of that was pushed to the side because we weren't allowed to interact with people, budgets were cut, etc. One moment that happened last year when we think about just the general holiday time period, we think about Thanksgiving. This is usually a time for many people to come together, to be with their families. And this was the first time in, a very long time, or the first time in a while that many people celebrated Thanksgiving alone or not with their family members. And so we were able to work on a campaign for Blue Moon and Babish, who is like this culinary, he has a crazy YouTube following. It's Binging with Babish. He's basically like a chef who helps demonstrates how to cook things. He was partnering with another chef named Sola El-Wai. She had just basically dismantled Bon Appetit magazine and called them out for just tons of unequal pay. Went from a gender standpoint. She was being underpaid 3 times less than what her white counterparts were being made. And so she pretty much dismantled the entire company before they had to reorganize and change everything. We partnered with her, Babish, and Blue Moon to help teach Americans how to cook a meal that's just a little different, very, had the Blue Moon twist on it. But what was really great is that we also were able to use this time to help raise money for sorry, I'm blanking on who the foundation was, but essentially it was to help get food access to everyone across the US. What I thought was interesting was just we're able to capitalize on a moment, help lift a voice up, and also bring the brand in a unique way that played out and resonated with most Americans who were cooking a meal for the very first time.
I was involved with when Boulevard became the official craft beer of the Kansas City Royals. I'm a giant baseball fan. I'll hit 32 games. This season my goal was 30, but part of that was we got to do some partnerships with players. So we had Whit Merrifield, our star second baseman. We had a campaign with him called Unfiltered Wit that actually started. We had a sign out on the left field wall that said Unfiltered Wheat Beer, Boulevard's most popular beer at the time. And one of the photographers snapped a picture of Whit standing in front of the sign where he'd blocked the E and the A. And Whit sent me this picture. He's like, I thought you'd think this was really cool. And I was so shocked that Whit had sent me a message. I didn't know what to do. So I sat for a few hours and thought about, how do I respond to this? And then I wrote back, unfiltered Whit, that's pretty cool. And I came to work the next day and showed it to my boss, who was the VP of marketing. And we started this campaign called Unfiltered Wit. We had shirts for it. We did tasting events where he was at tasting events in liquor stores to sign autographs and meet people during samplings. And another thing that we did is I worked with the team historian, or the guy who runs their museum and the Royals Hall of Fame, to do was Casey's Boulevard tour at the K. So he and I would give a tour of the stadium to a group of about 15 to 20 fans before a game, hitting all of the Boulevard branded bars throughout the stadium, having a sample of one of the beers on tap there. I'd talk about the beer. Casey would talk about baseball history, and then that would end with us having a beer right before the game started. So it was really cool to combine those passions together for me personally.
Awesome. I think that's all of our eBoard questions. I know that Taylor has a few audience questions that we would like to ask.
Oh, I got them in. So if anybody has any others, sorry.
Yeah, if there are any of our audience members who might have a question, you feel free to just unmute yourself and you can ask it, or if you feel more comfortable, you can put it in the chat and we'll ask it for you.
I have a question. What's something that you wish you knew before starting your career? It could be anything, but just something that you wish someone told college-aged you.
I think having a better, I wish I knew just a little bit more like how far it could take me and all the different pillars within both the communications, PR, advertising, marketing. There's just so much that it kind of like consumes. And I think when I first started off, I thought there was just generally like one path. And I think it goes to show that there are so many different avenues, so many different routes that you can take inwards. And like I worked on the advertising side, now on the marketing side, now on like a creative operations side. Intersect and work together in so many unique ways. But having that bigger picture lens, I think, was something that I wish that I had at first, but it's something that you learn as you get into the industry.
This is something that I'm still working on as a 40-year-old, but I wish someone had told me that being right isn't always as important as you think it is, and making sure that people know that you're right. I've been let go from a few jobs, and I've had, I think I've gained a lot of maturity in those meetings, but just let people be wrong sometimes, and then get through that, and then work on it later, offline.
I would say what I wish I told myself back then is trust your path. As I mentioned, I got my degree in PR, but I'm doing social media now. And I remember there were a lot of times where I didn't get a job that I applied for, and I was so upset, and it really, it hurt me. But now that I look back on it, like every step that I took got me to where I am today. So just trusting yourself more and trusting your path more, and just understanding that everything falls into place like it's supposed to.
I just want to really quick. I know like our theme, PRSSA's theme for the quarter is like making progress, and Jose, you had kind of touched about how like the Thanksgiving and the holidays had affected like social media in the past year. I guess, have you guys seen like a difference in the past couple of months, and how like I know the restaurant industry is almost basically back, and people are like meeting each other more often, and so like how was that shift during the pandemic, and then also like coming back to life and kind of people meeting each other again? How's that been, especially with managing social media?
Yeah, I think overall there's been this, I would say starting in like May to June of this year, I think just from an insight standpoint and what we were getting from our internal teams, that there was this longing sense of reconnection with so many consumers, right? They wanted to get out, they wanted to have that beer. This is when we started seeing all these campaigns like Budweiser and Molson and all these people, even gum, extra gum. I don't know if you guys ever saw that spot that they put out there, but essentially it was about the return to normalcy. and how normal was something that people really, really longed, because the new normal was just something that they did not like anymore, or something they were just getting tired of. But being able to hug, kiss, share a beer, hang out, I think was something that people were longing for. And so we were receiving a lot of requests and a lot of people saying, this is something interesting, we need to jump on it. But by the time we had already jumped on it, 3 other brands had already jumped on it. So we're like, it's all about getting ahead and being the first to market to say something. I think that's when it comes to like when we're talking about headlines and stealing headlines, that's like so important.
I have a follow-up to that. How are you all working now? Are you in an office? Are you at home? I mean, not this moment.
I have never stepped foot in an office since both jobs, like both at Molson Coors and at Kraft Heinz, never really stepped foot in the office to work there or interview. So it's been very unique, I would say.
We are doing a hybrid model at the moment. But pre-COVID, we did work from home on Fridays. So at the moment, we're working together 3 days a week and then at home 2 days a week.
I'm sitting at my kitchen table, which serves as my desk most often. Being a remote sales rep, the brewery that I work for is in St. Louis, 4 hours away from Kansas City. So my office is here a lot, and then I'm in restaurants and bars. But for the most part, everyone in St. Louis, given that it's just the requirements of the job, it's a production facility. You have to physically be there to make and package beer.
And a follow-up to that, what do you think the future holds? Because we're still kind of in it. Do you have a crystal ball?
I think there will be some flexibility. I think this hybrid model that Annalise was talking about is something that a lot of companies are going to adapt to. We're not expected to go back to the office until January of 2022 with a hybrid 3 days on, 2 days off. But they've also just let us know, be flexible. These things will change, and most likely there's no way to really pinpoint what's going to happen.
Yep, just about to say, we are sticking with the hybrid model for the moment because, we thought you could never do PR working from home, but we figured out you can. But not to only to that, we're going to start doing our press openings the same way, and like any announcements that we do. In COVID, this was a hotel, but we did a grand opening all virtual right in the middle of COVID because a lot of press people didn't want to obviously come inside. But now we're seeing, as we're starting to open different things, that the press still likes that virtual aspect with the option. So we think that's going to be something that a lot of publicists are going to be utilizing going forward now.
Yeah, I hope I like the hybrid model. I like the distance. I hope that proximity can continue to not be an impediment to education and employment.
Awesome. If we have any last questions, we can take those, but I think that's also a great place to sort of end our Q&A. So if our panelists have any final words of advice or just anything that they would like to say before we log off for the evening, that would be awesome.
I forgot to mention when I introduced myself that I saw that you guys had really professional headshots. My Twitter profile picture is a joke. I made a joke about everyone in Kansas City flocking to these sunflower fields and taking pictures. So a buddy of mine photoshopped me into this giant sunflower field, and then it popped up there, and I'm like, oh no, I need to explain this, and I forgot. But also try to talk about things that you know about and the things that you enjoy. I've been very fortunate in my career in beer that I've been able to share that passion and knowledge for people. I've had friends who worked for breweries that they'll send me the tweets or the Facebook posts that are written by someone who clearly does not care about beer, and it reads so easily, and it's so bad. And then the other thing I would say is we always want to be in the conversation, but I think it's important to know when your brand is not needed in the conversation. There are a lot of conversations that no one is sitting on a solemn day waiting to hear what a brewery has to add to the conversation. So I think it's important to be quiet sometimes.
I would say just in general, for interning wise, be that that person that stands out. Because, you know, an intern, you can tell from an intern, like if they're invested or if they're not, you know, be that person that stays a little late, be that person that's learning as much as you can, teaching yourself different things, always reading, asking questions is a huge thing. So just being that go-getter and exhibiting that.
Similarly, I think it's important to have a good point of view, just your own personal point of view. Typically, if there are like younger people in the room, I like to let them go first, the people who started off fresh. And it's not merely just to see if they get the answer right or wrong. It's more or less to see how they're thinking. And I think a lot of times we do want to hear what you think. What's your point of view on a creative idea that gets thrown to you or situation? It's so important that whoever else is in the room, whoever is seated at the table, gets to see how your brain works. And that's probably one of my like favorite things to do when I'm with for associates.
I really love that idea because it, you know, for especially our members, they're going to be new, they're going to be starting out. And so it's encouraging that speak up, have your voice, your perspective matters.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much to our panelists. For our panelists, if you are available to talk with any of our students, if you'd like to throw your email or your LinkedIn or any sort of your social media into the chat, I'm sure that our students would love to connect with you, learn some more, and just sort of keep up with what you're doing. Otherwise, thank you so much. A round of applause for our panelists. And yeah, have a great evening.
Yeah, before we say goodbye though, if you feel comfortable, you can come on camera. If you don't, it's okay. I just want to snap a quick screenshot of today. So just give everybody a second to fix their hair, all that, get into position. I just want to snap a quick picture of everybody.
3, 2, 1. Cool. Thank you.
All right, thank you. While the panelists are putting their information in the chat, I'll just share some final reminders from us for today. So if you came in late or you just want to catch another part of this meeting again, feel free to catch us on our YouTube channel where we post all our meetings and all our past meetings. And then just follow us on our social media. And again, our Slack channel, which is in the chat, or you can ask any one of us if you need to join it, which is where we send the most of our messages. All right, well, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Jose, Annalise, and Jeremy for kicking off our first meeting of the quarter. It was so lovely having you, and we hope to see the rest of you all soon at our next meeting. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.